Hello and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Adrian Samuel, and today I will be giving a presentation on how to cite references correctly based on a report given. Recently, I wrote my report on sleep apnea monitoring systems for my medical devices, and then I will be showing my report and the references that I have used and cited. So the reference style that I have used is IEE. It is essential to cite sources correctly because this prevents plagiarism, where a person steals somebody else's work without proper acknowledgement and trying to pass it off as their own. Another reason why we cite sources correctly is also to enhance credibility of our paper. With proper citations, our arguments and our work seems more reputable, and therefore making our writing more reliable and persuasive. And then lastly, it allows for citations to be traced back to the original sources so that readers can verify information and explore the topics further if they wish. So for the format of the IEE, first I use the reference number that I used in the report, followed by the authors, the title, the edition number, the publication location, the publisher, and year of publication. The very first source I'd like to be talking about is my source number 2. This source is very critical because this is a document done by ERCI, Emergency Care Research Institute, which tells me more about sleep apnea monitoring systems, especially the principles of operations and reported problems. Along with this, their website gives me the ability to look at different models of the sleep apnea monitoring systems that were released in different timings. So for example, one that was released in the 90s and one that was released in the 2000s, and I can see the difference. First, I put the reference number, so it's reference number 2, and then I give the author. In this case, this is not written by one single person, but is written by an entity. So I put ECRI. Next, I write down the full title of the document, which is Apnea Monitors. And then lastly, there is no edition number, so I omit that. I do put the publisher name, which is erc.members.com. And then next, I put the link to the website. And then lastly, I put the date of publication, which is 1 June 2024. I have to ensure that the report is as recent as I want more accurate data. However, this does not mean that data from more than 10 years ago is not relevant. However, it may not be as relevant as a more modern data. For my second reference, I would like to talk about my source number 10, which is a medical scientific research paper done by 2 individuals, Harun and Ahmed, and it talks about a novel portable real-time low-cost sleep apnea monitoring system based on the Global System for Mobile Communications GSM network. This basically, in essence, describes a medical or technological innovation aimed at detecting and monitoring sleep apnea in real time while using GSM technology for data transmissions and potentially for remote monitoring by health providers. And using the knowledge that I got from this research paper, I am able to note that observations in sleep apnea can be detected from changes in the output waveforms. As you can see, I first start off with the 2 authors' name, Harun Sambul and Ahmed Hayrettin, followed by the title of the paper, which is given above. And then lastly, it ends off with the publishing company, which is EPUB. And then lastly, the publication date, which is 2022, January 14th. For my third reference that I'll be talking about is my source 14. This is a web page done by IoT Physiotherapy and Rehabilitation, and this is actually a web page that talks about the precautions for use of self-adhesive electrodes, so electrodes that are applied onto skin. This is relevant for my sleep apnea monitoring system report because for impedance monitoring and then along with other forms of detecting sleep apnea, electrodes are being used and they're placed onto the skin of the patients. And ensuring that these rule sets and these precautions are taken ensures the safety of the patients along with the prevention of damage done to the machine. Some of these precautions are not necessarily things that one may know without having read them. For example, the use of electrodes while being put under the MRI machine may cause superheating burns done to the patient, which is a severe adverse event that we are trying to prevent. For the IEE, first I start off with the name of the author, which in this case is the organization ITO Physiotherapy and Rehabilitation, followed by the title, which is Precautions for Use of Self-Adhesive Electrode, and then lastly I give the link as well as the date. There is no edition number, there is no publication location being represented, so therefore I omit those from the IEE. Next, the fourth reference I'd like to highlight is my source number 5, which is a Wikipedia article for sleep apnea. The reasoning why I needed this for my report is because I needed to have a greater understanding of what the definition of sleep apnea is. So with this, I am able to understand that sleep apnea is a cessation in the breath of a patient, and I'm able to notice and to take note that there are 3 kinds of sleep apnea with 3 different causations. And this will help for later when I talk about the operation modes. So this Wikipedia article is a article that is semi-reliable because it is often reference checked by individuals who know more about the situation. And another reason why I use Wikipedia is because, as you can see, it is dated to 2025, so it is actually very recent. So next, I'll be talking about the IEE. So first, I talk about the author, which in this case, there isn't any particular author because Wikipedia is not necessarily written by a specific person. It's written by a collection of people. So therefore, I put down the organization, followed by the title, which is sleep apnea. Lastly, I put the link, and I put the date, which is 3rd January 2025. For my next reference, number 5, I'd like to talk about my source number 9. So I'd like to be talking about the rule that was given by the US Food and Drug Administration. So when I was searching on the web, I learned more about this FDA rule, and this talks more about sleep apneas, the classification, and the regulation. So this rule is established to distinct the classification for apnea monitors, separating them from the category of breathing frequency monitors. And because of that, this way it could be done for better regulation. And because of this higher monitoring and more specialization done by the FDA, this actually allows for me to learn more about what are some rules that were established and what are some precautions. For example, in my report, I learned more about what are some secondary modalities that are used by the sleep apnea monitoring machine. So in this case, one thing I learned was the CO2 monitor, and another one being the ECG, being the secondary modalities being used along with the main one, which is fumonography. For this IEE, I just followed what was the given document header. So it is US Food and Drug Administration, medical devices, apnea monitor, special controls, first rule, Federation registration, 2002, July 17, along with the ID number. I did not change this because to ensure traceability, I used the exact document name and the exact document ID that was given, so that those that want to cross-reference and check with the source that I've listed, they can find the exact document. For my 6th reference, I'd like to be talking about another design control guidance document that was done by the FDA for compliance of medical device manufacturers. So this is a guide written to comply with design controls along with good manufacturing practices. And one of the good manufacturing practices that I took away from this while writing my report is the importance of traceability and documentation as a compulsory requirement by regulatory bodies such as the FDA, which includes recorded documentations of the design, manufacturing steps, and reviews. Moving on next to the IEE format, first I write down the organization, which is the FDA, followed by the title, Design Control Guidance, followed by the link to the PDF of the Design Control Guidance, and then lastly the date. There is no edition number, publication location, and therefore I omit those two. For my 7th reference, I'll be quoting my 27th source, which is from the Diesel Laptop blog. And the reason why I use this blog is because this gave me a reference on what a maintenance checklist looks like and what the company actually uses as a heavy equipment maintenance checklist. Then using that knowledge, I created my own checklist for one of the components of my report. Taking a look at the IEE, I first quote the authors, which in this case there are non-specific, so I write down the organization, followed by the title, Heavy Equipment Maintenance Checklist, then the link, then lastly I put the publisher, which is Diesel Laptop, and then the year. There is no specific date given by the website, there is only a date of the website, so therefore I put 2024. And then lastly, edition is omitted because there are no editions and there is no additional publication location. For my 8th reference, I'll be quoting my 24th source. So this is an ISO guideline, ISO 14644 2025, which talks about clean room and associated controlled environments. And this talks about the classification of air cleanliness by particle concentration. And this is very important for my good manufacturing part of my report because it talks about maintaining clean room standards, talking about how we need a class 7 or class 8 ISO clean room for the manufacturing of medical devices. So for my IEE, I first put the name, which is the entire title, ISO 14644-1 2015. Then I put the title, Clean Rooms and Associated Controlled Environments, Part 1, Classification of Air Cleanliness by Particle Concentration, and then lastly, the URL. And then lastly, as this is the first edition for the ISO 14644, I put that down and I add the date, which is 2015. I'm not given an exact date, I'm only given a year, so therefore I put this down. There is no publication location, and therefore I omit that. And for my 9th and final reference, I'll be talking about my source 15, which is a research paper done by individuals, Abdul Kabir and Caroline Marine, about the diagnosis of sleep apnea without sensors on a patient's face. This was an important document I referenced when I was trying to understand more about how to detect sleep apnea using a secondary modality, which in this case is airflow monitoring. So therefore, it refers to the use of thermistors, aka nasal temperature sensors, and it helps signify apneic episodes, especially when there was a change in the resistance in the thermistor. For the IE format, first I quote the name Abdul Kabir Sabil along with the second author, which is Caroline Marine, and then I put the name of the research paper, Diagnosis of Sleep Apnea Without Sensors on the Patient's Face. Then next I put down the link to the URL, and then lastly I put down the date, which is 5th July 2020. There is no publication location, and therefore I omit that. And there's no edition number, so I also omit that. So lastly, as a final guide on how to write and cite sources, first off you write the reference number, then next you write the authors, followed by the title, the edition number, the publication location, the publisher, and the year of publication. When there are no authors, or if it's done by a collection of people, an organization, you only put the name of the organization. And if there are no edition number, there's no publication location. In the event of such things such as an article or a legal document done by a governing body, you can omit those. Thank you very much for listening to my video, and may God bless.